So we have this slide. Let me share the screen with you. Okay, so this is the screen here, right? So association rules is what we are going to discuss. Association rules, as I said, is known by different names. It's also known as market basket analysis, but market basket analysis is more of an application rather than the correct name, right? So the algorithm is actually, the correct name is association rules, and the application, when you apply it into our marketing context, then we call it the market basket analysis, right? When you analyze what the customer is buying, what is he doing, then that is known as the market basket analysis, right? So that's what we are going to study. This, there is an interesting background, there is an interesting history how this actually started. This is also known as the beer diaper problem. Some people know it by the name of beer diaper problem. So what had happened, I've forgotten right which chain of retail or where it happened, that I don't remember. But what had happened is that the people who were planning sales, say the sales planner and inventory managers, what they saw is that typically on Saturdays and Sundays, they suddenly saw there was a surge of sales in beer and diaper. Diaper as in the infant's diaper, child diapers, not the adult diapers, right? So they suddenly say that that there was a surge in these two uh, items, right? So they were like intrigued, and they were baffled. How come like the child diapers are selling with beer, right? Which beer is an out and out, let's say, adult kind of a consumption product. So how is it selling with the child diapers, right? So what they found is that on Saturdays, what happened is that when the male who was generally earning, and this is 1970s, when not all the women in US were working, right? Some of them were housewives like India. So when the women were working for 5 days, then on the sixth day they wanted a break. So what they wanted is, when the husband was typically home, they wanted that the husband should take care of the child, the small child, right? And husbands, I mean, because for 5 days they were working, so they were also tired, they also thought of having a break, and they usually wanted to watch this American football, right? That oval thing that they call the American football. So the solution that these males devised is, and then they wanted to look at a football game, sipping on to some beer, right? The beers are not so alcoholic as the Indian beers, right? So the thing that they devised it, they used to get diapers from the superstores or the stores, and they'll put the children on the diapers so that they don't make noise and all those things, and they'll enjoy the football game, right? So that is why there was a surge of beer and diaper together. But the idea is that these two items go together on Saturdays and Sundays, right? And so this then clicked, this as an idea. Then people thought there could be other items also which are going together, isn't it? So if we can actually look into the basket of a consumer, and we can figure out what those items are, then it would serve many purposes, right? One, it can help put the inventory, it can help in inventory management. This is one, right? So the inventory could be managed. And the other thing is, there is something known as a planogram. What is a planogram? That when before a superstore or a hyperstore is laid down, then a plan is prepared on a paper, right? And there they decide that which items are going to be put where. So there are two kind of philosophies you look at it, right? There are many things, many principles which are used, right? Items which are related to a children should be put at that height, items which are related to a adult should be put at that height. If you put something at exactly the eyesight level, then the chances of that thing selling are very very high, right? So these kind of rules are used. The other rule is that, let's say, butter and bread go together, right? So one idea could be that you put butter in the starting at the entrance, and put the bread at diagonally at the end. The advantage would be that the person will have to travel the entire floor, and by nature, we also do something known as impulse buying. Like example, you don't plan if you have to buy a chewing gum or a chocolate, isn't it? That's impulse buying. Or if you want to drink some kind of a Coke or something, right? So it's all unplanned. So these kind of things which are unplanned are known as impulse buying, right, where not much planning is required. So the idea is that if you know that of a person who's buy butter, the chances are very high that he'll buy bread also. And if you make him cross the floor, then what is going to happen is that he may do some impulse buying on the route. That might happen. This is one. The second thought says that put the bread and the milk together, the bread and the butter together. So if he's buying bread, he'll be reminded of the butter automatically, right? So he'll pick up the butter also and go. So different kind of rules, philosophies happen, but the idea is that this kind of a study is useful, where we want to understand that what items go together, and we want to do it right. Now, why do we require an algorithm to do this? I mean, should it not be a very simple thing? Can I not look at the sales register? It's all electronic now. Get that data into some kind of Excel and analyze it. That should be a easy thing to do. Why do we like need to get into this area of machine learning, or why to get into this area of algorithms and to solve such a problem, right? Which seems to be a bit easy and trivial. I mean, if I can put it this way. So the idea is this. I mean, if you typically look at, let's say, a hyperstore, right? All of you would have gone into a Reliance store or something like that. I'm not talking of that, the mini format of Reliance, but the Reliance Hyper one, right? Reliance Smart probably. So if you look at a Reliance Smart, I don't know how many SKUs they carry now, but at some point of a time, I'd done a study on a Reliance Hypermart which was opened in Ahmedabad, and they typically carry 1 lakh SKUs. SKU, the full form is stock keeping unit, right? So, what is a stock keeping unit? Stock keeping unit, let me give you an example so that you understand what a stock keeping unit means. Example, let's say you go and buy toothpaste, right? Any toothpaste. Now, that comes in different packages, right? 75 grams, 100 grams, 250 grams, which is called as the family pack, right? So though the brand, let's say you're buying Colgate salt, right? So Colgate salt, that is the thing that you're buying, but it has different packages, 75, then 100, 250 grams. So this 100, when you say Colgate salt 100 gram becomes 1 SKU, stock keeping unit, because the inventories are recorded at this level. A Colgate doesn't mean anything, or Colgate salt also doesn't mean anything, right? So the inventory keeping happens at a pack size level also, right? Similarly, if you look at shampoos, they come in sachets and they also come in bottles, right? So those are different SKUs. So if you typically count the SKUs that are there in a hypermarket, they can range from 50,000 to 1 lakh, right? Depending on which probably superstore you're talking. If you talk a big bazaar, they'll be roughly at 80,000, right? So this is the kind of inventory they have to manage. Now, if you look at 80,000 items, right? You have 80,000 items. Now you're talking of combinations, isn't it? So you say that two items go together. How many combinations can you make of 80,000 item? 80,000, and probably you can put that exclamation mark in the end, right? So it's a huge number. It will run into multi billions, right? Rather trillions, not even billions. It will run into multi trillions. That's the size of combinations that you can make, right? 80,000 factorial. This is what I'm saying, right? So 80,000 factorial is a huge number. Now you may say that, okay, let's assume that even 75% of the items are not frequent items. Okay. So even 25% of 80,000 trillion is a massive number, isn't it? So one thing is very, very sure, you cannot deal with this kind of combinations, numbers, understanding on an Excel level. That's absolutely very, very difficult. You can't do it, right? So how do we like let's say deal with this? We need to deal with it at an algorithmic level. We need to have an algorithm to deal with this, right? So this is the area of association rules. So how do we find the association rules, right? So this is why we need this algorithm. So we'll try and understand all that. This is what we'll do today. So what are association rules? So study of what goes with what, right? Now, when I say what goes with what, that doesn't mean that you can apply it in a marketing context only, right? Or in a supermarket context only, right? That's what doesn't mean. So example is right. Customer who bought X also bought Y. You are answering these kind of questions, or this is from a retail kind of a business. But look at the other example. It is what symptoms go with what diagnosis, right? So what are the symptoms, and then what was the diagnosis that was made, right? So you can have association rules there also. Now, this kind of a association rules, if you want to use this algorithm, it requires the data to be in a special format, right? Your normal format, the way we have discussed the formats, which were either in the attribute or the classification format, or principal component analysis where all the variables were arranged, or the regression thing where you had dependent and independent variables, that is not going to work, right? So your data has to be in the form of something known as transaction based or event based. Transactions, when when you go to a market and somebody gives you a bill, so that's a transaction thing that you have. So the first column would be some serial number, the second column would be some item, let's say there would be item code which would be there, then item explanation would be there, then the quantity would be there, amount would be there, and some could be a VAT or something, right? This is what a transaction is, right? And when we are preparing data for associated rules, just remember that we are not interested in the quantity and the amount. Now, you may call it a drawback or you may call it whatever, right? When we do association rules, we are not interested in the amount. This is one. The amount column we need to remove. It's of no use. And the quantity column is also not important. So what I'm trying to say is that if you buy some product as one quantity or you buy that product in 100 quantities, that is immaterial, right? It's one and the same. Now you may say this is some kind of a, let's say, lacuna or something. Okay, that is there, but then there are association rules which have been modified to accommodate quantity and all those things. But they are more of subjective ideas. They don't have a very strong theoretical background, right? So it's like I use some rule, I think this will work, and I modify association rule. That's what happens. But as I said, like the transaction data will only have the code or the item detail. That's all. It will not have the quantity detail, or neither will it have the amount detail. That we need to keep in mind. So this is also called, as I told you, the different names: association rules, market basket analysis. Some people call it affinity analysis also. Some people call it the beer diaper problem, this and that, right? So this originated how that customer transactions. So you have a database where, like, when the person is billing, the point of sale data, right? So when you are getting your items billed, all of you would be going to supermarkets, and at the end, I mean, you take a basket, right? A trolley or a basket, whatever you take, and you go to the point where the billing happens. That is known as the point of sale, POS, right? So that POS data actually gets registered into a database, right? And all those details get registered. I mean, item code, item detail, quantity, time, amount, the payment, how the payment was made, and all those things, right? So so that's what the source of our data is. It's also used in many recommended system. Once you know that what goes with what, you can use it for recommendation also, right? So if you know bread and butter go together, if somebody has bought a bread, you can then recommend and say that people like you also bought butter, right? So some recommended systems are based on the association rules also. Okay. So the first part is how do we generate these rules, right? Because this is association rules. So how do we generate these rules? So the first part that we are discussing is that because there would be some terms there, so we need to understand those terms very, very clearly, right? So generally these rules would be in the form if this, then this. If milk, then bread. Now you can understand that there is an antecedent or the left hand side. You can call it the left hand side or the antecedent, right? So there is a term that is being used. So you can call it the antecedent or you can call it the left hand side, LHS. And there would be an arrow, right? There would be an arrow to separate the left hand side and the right hand side. The arrow would be pointing from the left hand towards the right hand. And then on the right hand, you'll have the consequent part. So how do you read it? If milk, then butter, or it could be if milk, butter, then bread, right? So on the left hand side, you can have a single item or you can have multiple items. Similarly, on the right hand side, you can have a single item or you can have multiple items. A null is also allowed. That means no item on the right hand side is also allowed, right? On the right hand side is allowed. You may call it the null item, right? Now, the second definition that we need to understand is something known as the item set, right? So what is the item set? The entire rule when you pick up. So let's say there are 10 rules: milk, bread, then butter, and then you say honey, oats, then you have let's say cashew nuts, for example. So if I pick up the rule number one, milk, bread, then butter, then this is three items, right? So milk, bread, butter, simple. So I'm not paying attention on what side they occurred, right? But they occurred. Two of them occurred on the left hand side, one occurred on the right hand side, right? So in the other rule, if I look at it, honey, then let's say oats and almond, let's say, then on the right hand side we have two items and on the left hand side we have only one item. But the item set will consist of these three items irrespective of where they are occurring, right? This is one very important thing, so try to understand it. If there is any confusion on this, just let me know. The item set is a collection of all the products that are either occurring on the antecedent side or on the consequent side. Or to put it in a simple way, it's a collection of things which are occurring on the left hand side and on the right hand side. That's what it is. Okay. Always understand the third thing is that you have to understand is antecedent and consequence are disjoint. That means if two items occur on the left hand side, they cannot occur on the right hand side. So repetition, you cannot have one item repeated both on the antecedent and the consequence. That is definitely not allowed, right? So just keep this in mind. It's not allowed. Okay, so these are our basic terms, if then kind of a thing. The item set is very, very important. We'll have to remember it. The entire algorithm, the basic algorithm revolves around the item set only. This concept of item set, just remember this. That's why this is very, very important, right? Because we'll discuss one of the algorithms, so it will be like around this. So let's say we take a small example, because bigger examples here are not possible because the number of combinations can be mind-boggling, right? And we can be lost in the details. So let's say this is the old Nokia phone. If you remember, at some point of a time, it has ruled the market, isn't it? It was the ruler of the market, isn't it? And let's say, so look at the data. Transaction number one, this is the transaction number, transaction ID, and here it is, we are just focusing on one item, which is the faceplates, right? Faceplate of that Nokia phone. So the first entry, if you look at it, is red, white, and green, right? The three colors. And the second, so somebody bought red, white, and green. And I was telling you that here we do not know how many red did he buy, how many white did he buy, how many green did he buy. We do not know. And also we do not know, are the prices of these three faceplates the same, or are the prices different, right? That also we don't know when we look at this data. This is known as the transaction data, I told you, right? So this entire thing is known as the transaction data, where we have just written the items. Now the actual transaction data may be a big data, because this is one invoice. And let's say if you monthly go and buy the groceries, right? Typically in a month you will be going and purchasing all your groceries. So there may be like 10 kind of masalas, 3 kinds of dals, some kind of cereals and all those things. So typically it could be 30, 40 items easily. So here we have only 3 items, but your practically, if I look at somebody who has been purchasing for the month, then it can be easily 30-40 items written like that, but they all have to be written like this. There are 3 items, you can extend it to 30 items, right? So this is known as the transaction kind of a data. That's why this is a very unique thing, and you will not get much of this data in the public domain, right? So there is only one data that is available, and that is available in R. So we are going to use that. But beyond this, you will not get much data here. Just remember that, okay? So to give you a feel. Uh, so you can look at these transactions now. So the first transaction is red, white, green. The second transaction is about white and orange, right? This is the color of the faceplates. And as I said, we don't know the amount, what amount was involved. We do not know the quantity that was involved. We just know that somebody bought red. At least one was bought. That's a guarantee. So red, white, green, white, orange, white, black. So this is the kind of 10 people came. You can assume it this way. There's 10 people who came. The first person bought red, white, and green face plates. The second person bought white and orange. And this is how like your things are. Okay. Now, so now let's talk about rules, right? So and the rules are very simple. Left hand side, then right hand side. That's all. From this data, we have to form rules. It's very, very simple. This is what the association mining does, right? So now let us only look at this transaction one. So just remember it, red, white, green. There are 3 colors written, red, white, green. Now if I use red, white, green, then what are the different rules that I can form? So one rule could be if red, if somebody bought a red, then he also bought a white one, right? This could be the rule. If I only look at rule number one, let's say, right? Just the first rule. It could be the reverse also, because there is no direction given. We are not given that he bought the red first or the white first, right? When you look at your invoice, it doesn't state you picked up the dal first or the rice first, right? It doesn't state it this way. You get it there, and whatever comes out of your basket first, that is billed first, isn't it? So it all depends on the order in which your items come out of your trolley or come out of your basket. They don't depend actually on the sequence of purchase that you did, isn't it? So the rule could be if red, then white, or the rule could also be if white, then red, right? Then there could be one more rule, red and white, then green, or it could be red, green, then white. So you can understand how many rules are possible, right? There can be more rules. So just one transaction, 3 items, and look at the number of rules. 3 already listed. I'm sure you can make more rules out of it. At least 4, 5 rules are possible. So this is a very small transaction, 3 item transaction. I mean, generally nobody goes to a supermarket to do just buy 3 items, isn't it? So keep that in mind, right? So the number of rules possible are many, right? That's one more challenge. That's why I said, though it is a simple thing, but if you want to do it in Excel, you will have to frame, I mean, at times trillions of rules are possible, right? So ideally what we want to do is we want to create all possible combinations of item, right? Because we do not know who bought first what, and because of that item, is it like that he thought of buying the other? We don't know it, right? Ultimately the person brings a basket to the POS, right? And we look at it, right? So the sequence kind of a thing, we don't know. Anything would have been bought, and because of that the other thing would have been bought or whatever, right? So what we try to do is we try to create all possible combinations. Now go back to the information that I gave you. Think of a store which has 50,000 SKU or 1 lakh SKU or even 10,000 SKU for that matter. Or go to your nearest Kirana store also, right? Some Kirana store which is very near to you. That guy will also be carrying easily 2,500 SKUs, right? So even 2,500 SKUs, you can understand how complex the situation can be. So what happens is your computation time grows exponentially as the number of item increases, right? It actually increases exponentially. So what do is we can't talk of, we cannot discuss that we make all the possible combinations. That is something which is impractical, isn't it? So some kind of, let's say, we'll have to put in some kind of cutoffs, right? So we will not, because there are 50,000 items, so we'll not start with, I told you how many rules are possible. So 50,000 and then factorial, right? So 50,000 into 49,000, so on and so forth, that trillions of things that are possible. So if we go with that approach computationally, this will become a very, very difficult situation, isn't it? Very difficult. So is not a practical thing. So what we do is we try to work on a subset, right? Now the thing is, how do we select a subset? So that method of selecting a subset is known as something known as frequent item sets. So we'll only select items which are frequent. Why to select those items which are not frequent, right? Now when I say frequent, then it can have definitions. You suppose some let's say supermarket will say that if an item doesn't move daily, then it is not frequent, right? At least one, it should be billed once in a day. One customer should be there for that item at least once a day. This is how they may define frequent. Some other store may say that, okay, if there is a small kirana store, it cannot say that the item should be billed daily. It may say that, okay, the item should move at least once in a month, right? If it is at least once in a month, then only it is frequent, right? So the definition of frequency can vary, right, from store to store, people to people, that we understand, right? So the frequency is generally defined by a term which is known as support, right? So we are introducing some more terms. So one more term we are introducing, support, and we need to know these terms very, very clearly, because if you remember, when we are doing decision trees, then these terms were there. And at that point of a time, I told you that I'm not going to discuss support and all these things in detail, right? We'll discuss it when we come to association rules, right? So because we didn't discuss it at that time, we need to discuss it now, and you can understand why support and all those things were there, because decision tree was giving you rules, if then kind of a rules, right? And decision trees you have already seen, if this then this kind of a rules. The decision tree was generating rules there, right? So always understand that if I want to evaluate my rules, if I want to cut off or make subset of my rules, then I need some parameters. Then those parameters we are discussing. So the first one is support, right? So what is a support? We'll try to understand. So how do we calculate support? Very simple calculation. It's just about a numerator and denominator. That's all. You should know what goes in the numerator and what goes in the denominator. After that, it is just a division, right? So support, how do I define? Is the number or percentage of transaction. Generally, it would be number of transaction that include both the antecedent and the consequent, right? So let's say that if I have this item set red then white, right? So red and white both become the item set, as I told you. Now if I go to this, then how many of the transactions actually have red and white? So let's go here and look at it. The first transaction 1, the fourth transaction 2, then the eighth transaction has red and white, third, and the ninth transaction, which is the fourth transaction, has red and white together, right? It should come together. So if I want to look at this rule of red and white, then 4 transactions out of 10 transactions have this. So the support for red, if red then white, is 40%, right? If red then white. And similarly, if white then red will also be 40%, right? That goes without saying. If you flip the sides, that means if you make the right hand side the left hand side and the left hand side the right hand side, that's flipping the sides. If you flip the sides, then also the support remains the same, right? Because there is no sense of direction here, right? So 40% is my support, right? Let's say we take one more example. Let's say this is a collection of those transactions, right? We put it in a different way. And this D is a collection of transactions, right? So the first transaction, you let's say the items are numbered. There are 5 items. It's a very small thing. Nobody will sell 5 items. But let's say it's 5 items are also there. If it is a aeroplane manufacturing company, it will not have more than 5 items, isn't it? Do you think Aerobus has more than 5 items at any point of a time to sell? No. So Airbus will have only a 5 items maximum, right? So they'll have A320, A380, some 4 5 models only, right? So let's say this. So there is a company which is selling 5 items, right? So the first customer came and he bought item number 1, 2, 3. The second customer came. So this is one more way of representing your transaction data set, right? So he bought 1, 2, 3 item. The second person bought item number 2, 3, 4. Then the third person bought item number 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5, 1, 3, 5. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 transactions that happened, and in those transactions, these are the item numbers. So this time we are not naming the transaction the way we were doing it last time, red, white, green. This time what we are doing is we are numbering the items, right? So anything is possible. So let's say we want to understand the support for 1, 2. So if I look at, there are 5 transactions in total, so the denominator is fixed. The denominator is mod of D. That means the total number of transactions that going to be 5. That is fixed, right? But what is the support for this? So 1 and 2 occur together. 1 here they occur, second situation, and 1 and 2 occur together here. So this is 3 out of 5. So this is 3 by 5, right? So that means the support for 1, 2 item set is 3 by 5, which you can write as 60% also, zero point 0.6 also, 3 by 5, whatever way you want to write it, right? So there is one algorithm by the name of a priori algorithm, right? Which is the mainstay. Though if you look at R has two algorithms to deal with frequent item set. One is a priori algorithm, and the other one is known as ECLAT, E-C-L-A-T, ECLAT algorithm. But so R only gives that ECLAT algorithm. But generally, if you look around the world, a priori is the algorithm of choice. This has been given by an Indian, and of course, because this is related to retail, and retail is dominated by Marwadis, so you can understand a Marwadi has only given a algorithm, and his name is Agrawal. I forgot the first name, so Agrawal, and plus he has two more co-authors. So they are the ones who have given this a priori algorithms, right? He's a professor in one of the US universities, so he has given this a priori algorithm. Okay. So what is it? It's the a priori algorithm has certain steps. So the first step it says is that we should generate frequent item set. How will you generate a frequent item? So the complete number of items that you have is your complete item set. A subset of that is known as the frequent item set, right? So how do we generate a frequent item set? So we put a cutoff of minimum support criteria. So we'll say anything which does not have a, let's say for example, we may say that anything which does not have a support of minimum 40%, we are not going to select it. Right? So any item which does not have a support of 40% is not going to be selected, is not going to be a part of the frequent item set. Understand the frequency is based on single item, right? So what we are saying is that left hand has one item and the right hand side has a null kind of a thing. Bread then null, right? So you can calculate the support for this kind of a situation also. Like example, if I go back here, you can actually calculate the support for 1. So if you look at 1, it is occurring in how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. The support for 1 alone itself is 80%, right? If I look at support for 2, then the support for 2 is also 80%, right? The support for 5 is what? 2 by 5, that's 40%, right? So for a single item also you can calculate the support, remember that, right? So now we go to the a priori algorithm. Step number 1, we set a minimum support criteria and we generate a list of one item set that meet the support criteria, right? So if I set it as 40%, it will make rules of one item set only. Left hand side and the right hand side is a 5 or a null set, right? And it will calculate the support. And if you have specified the support as 40%, then it's only going to select those items which have a support of at least 40%. That means when I say a support of 40%, that means they occur in at least 40% of the transactions, total transactions that have happened. Or you can set your support as 20% also. You may say 40% is too high, so let me set it as 20%. That means you are only looking for those items which occur in at least 20% of the transactions. Anything which is occurring in less than 20% of the total transactions, we are not interested. Okay. So you'll after this you'll have a one item list, right? And this is according to the support criteria, right? You have given a support criteria to the machine, and based on that, it is going to select an item set, right? Which would be there. Now, what will happen is just understand that anything which is frequent, I mean, this is common sense. If anything is frequent, a combination of that is also going to be frequent, definitely, right? So then what is done is combinations are made. So then you can make out of this one item set, you can make combinations of two, you can make three item combination, you can make four item combination, and you can proceed till k item combination, right? So combinations are made. Okay, so let's say you look at this, right? Example, let's say this is a transaction database. I hope is visible to you. Let me enlarge the fonts a bit, the size a bit. So let's say transaction T1, you have bread, jelly, peanut butter. And the transaction 2 is bread and peanut butter. The transaction 3 is bread, milk, peanut butter, beer, bread, beer, milk, right? A very limited kind of thing is shown. So if I, let's say, if I look at this bread, then peanut butter, then can I calculate the support? Yeah, I can calculate it, right? Because how many times is bread and peanut occurring together? One, two, two here, bread and again peanut butter, three times out of five. So that is 60%. This part will come. What is this alpha thing? We'll come to that, right? So you can do it for a single item also. Bread, how many times it is coming? One, two, three, four. So it is 80%, right? I told you. So single item. This way you can calculate it. Now, so minimum support. See, at times what happens is that people, the support thing does not work. So we need one more criteria, and we are introducing one more term, which we'll call as confidence, right? So some of these algorithms, like example R, will give you an option of setting support, and I think it gives an option of setting the confidence also. We'll check it. I mean, I'm a bit confused, but some algorithms will give you an option of setting both. They'll allow you to set the support also, and then allow you to set a minimum confidence also, right? So that is also possible in some softwares. So some will give you only the support thing, the others will give you both the things, right? So this is there, right? You can see, like example, shoes. If you look at this, these shoes is 75%, shirt is 50%. So these are single item, right? Jacket is 50%, shoes and jacket are 50%. So if I put a confidence, minimum confidence of 60%, then what's going to happen is I'll only have shoes. That's it, right? The others will not be included in the frequent item set. Only shoes will be included in the item set, right? That's what is going to happen. Okay, so I mean, depending on the problem, we do this, right? Now, coming back to this, let's go to this thing. So this is my uh, the frequent item set property. So if there is phi, and the phi is not the null thing, it is the frequent item set. And let's say it has four items A, B, C, D. So after like putting now this I frequent item test I may have got after either setting the support thing, or it may be setting both support and confidence. I can do a support and confidence also. So we'll understand what a confidence is, right? Support, we know what is support, how to calculate support. We'll also understand how to calculate confidence also. Okay, so this may be after setting both support and confidence, or it may be just support, or it may be just confidence, right? So let's say we have A, B, C, D. These are the four items which make it to the selection, right? After whatever criteria we have put. Now we can make two item combinations, A, B, A, C, A, D, because these are four, so we know 4C2, right? That is the possibility. So six numbers of items that we can have as combinations of two, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see it. Out of these six, we can make three item combinations also. So you can AB, and if I combine this, it would be ABAC, it would be ABD, so on and so forth, right? So three item thing, and we can have a four item thing also, and everything stops here. So this is a one item set. From this, we had made the selection, and from these, we can then further make combinations of two item set, three item set, four item set, right? So, and it can be a k item set also, right? So this is how the thing works, right? So this is what the algorithm, this is what the a priori algorithm is ultimately, right? This is how it will work. Now, generally what happens is, whatever you do, I mean, whatever cutoffs you put or whatever you do, because this is all based on combinations. And generally, whenever you get into the area of combinations, the number of combinations can really be very, very large. I mean, they are just not under our control, and the number of combinations can be very, very large, right? So what happens is, accordingly, there would be many, many rules which are generated, right? So the question, so there is a fundamental question: can all the rules we believe? This is one. And should we use all the rules? Are all the rules useful from a business perspective? So these are the questions that come to our mind, right? So answer to this is that all the rules may not be useful, right? There is a problem. So we'll see what kind of problems are there when you are forming rules. So what kind of situations come when you're forming rules? This is one. Then the second thing is, from the quality of rules, do we have some kind of a quantitative estimator, quantitative parameter, where we can understand that this rule is believable and this rule is not believable, right? It's very, very believable, and the other is not believable, right? So confidence we did. So I'm introducing the third term, which is known as lift, right? So lift, generally any rule is believed or taken into account if the lift is greater than 1. Only those rules for which the lift happens to be greater than 1 is taken into account. Otherwise, that rule is simply dropped, right? So you might have lakhs and thousands of rules that might come up. And if you remember in your decision tree also, if you go back and look at your C5.0 package, and if you try to run those rules again, you will see that only the rules which had a lift of greater than 1 were printed on the screen. The other rules were not, right? So what does that mean? Why are we like putting, why are we saying that only lift greater than 1 is good? Because when lift is greater than 1, it indicates that a rule that is useful in finding consequent item, right? That's not random selection. You can do random selections also, so it's better than random selection, right? That's what a lift means, isn't it? And we discussed, when we were doing classifiers, we discussed what is the lift that you get, right? So lift, when the lift is greater than 1, it means that it is better than random selections, or it's not a random kind of a thing, right? So that is the reason. So what does the lift mean? Lift is a confidence divided by benchmark confidence, right? And what does the benchmark confidence mean? Transaction with consequence only as percentage of all transactions. You are not looking at all the items, but you are only looking at consequence. So this is a truncated confidence. This confidence is for left hand, right hand, both combined. And benchmark confidence is only you take at the left hand side things, right? That's what you call as the consequence, right? So we'll do some small examples so that this is like clear to you what it means. So first we'll come to confidence, how to calculate confidence, right? So here is some formula that is given. So X A union X B and this and that is said. Probably if that doesn't make too much sense, let's do a numerical kind of a thing, right? So this SUP stands for support of 1 and 2 divided by support of 1. So confidence is also a derivative of support if you look at it. So all your items actually are derivatives of this thing known as support. If you look at it, you will see this is the support of your consequence end, because union and and your this is your consequence, right? This is your antecedent and this is your consequence. So this is support for antecedent and consequences both combined. And this is your support for antecedent only, right? This is the ratio of two supports if you look at it, right? So that is known as confidence. So if you look at 1 2 3 2 3 4, and if you want to understand the confidence for this rule 1 and 2, the first thing, so that means support has to be calculated for 1 and 2. So how many, what is the support for 1 and 2? You will see 1 by 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2 here. So there are 3 out of 5. So that's the support for 1 and 2. If I want to look at support for 1 only, then what will happen? How many are there? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is coming 4 by 5 times, right? So this is 4 by 5. Let me have a pen so that, so this will come to 3 by 5 and this will come to 4 by 5. So 3 by 5 divided by 4 by 5, if you do it, ultimately this is what you get. So if you divide these both, this is what you are going to get, isn't it? It's a simple math, you can do it if you want. But remember, confidence is support of, so the first thing that we calculate is support, right? And the support is what? It is calculated like this. Then from support, the confidence is nothing, but your confidence is actually a derived parameter if you can look at it. It is support of, it is the support for your antecedent plus consequence, right? And antecedent you can call it left hand side or right hand side if you are confused about what is where. And then it is the support for antecedent only, right? It is the support for antecedent only, right? So it's a ratio of two supports. And then we discuss that what is your lift. So your lift is derived from confidence, right? So your lift is equal to what? It is the confidence for the whole thing. It is the confidence for the whole thing, right? So the confidence for A and C, right, is the confidence you calculate for A and C, and then you calculate the confidence for only A, right? So do you see this? So the lift is a ratio of confidences, right? So it's a confidence of A only. So if you look at it, the original thing is the support thing, right? So let's go and see if we can do one more example and understand it. So if you look at here, so then we are coming to lift. So this is how lift is calculated. Confidence of x and y divided by the probability of y. It boils down to this, right? Or it will boil down to x and y and px and py, right? So we'll do some calculation so that you understand it's not so difficult, right? So the same thing, that that mobile cover data, we have taken that mobile cover data again, but this time we have put it in a binary matrix, I mean, right? So what is a binary matrix? I mean red, white, blue, orange, green, yellow. These are all the colors. And if in transaction number one, this is also known as one hot encoding at times, right? So if it was available in, if the red was bought, you make it one. So the white was bought, the blue was not bought, orange was not bought. So you make it zero, right? So the same thing that you saw first is put in a different format. You can call it the binary matrix format, right? So if the thing was present in that particular transaction, you make it one. If the thing is not present in that transaction, you make it zero, right? It's very simple, the same thing. But it's looking like a matrix, isn't it? In that transaction thing, there were 3 items here, 2 items here, a sort of unequal, right? Unequal entries were there. But here it is looking symmetrical. That's the advantage of a binary matrix, right? Looking very symmetrical. So So now let's look at an example. Let's say we want to look at this rule, or we want to generate rules for red, white, green. That was our first example. So if you look at it, red, white, then green, then the confidence would be 2 by 4, because red, white, and green, how many places are they occurring? Transaction number one. And do we have any other place where red, white, and green are occurring? We have transaction number 8, and then we don't have any transactions. So there are only two transactions where red, white, and green are occurring, right? So if you look at red, white, then green, then out of these total things, what we see is the support would be how much? 2 by 5. So the support would be 2 by 5, right? We are calculating confidence this time. So remember the definition for confidence. It is support of 1 by 2. So if I calculate the numerator, I'll get 2 by 5. Then I need to calculate support for 1, right? Support for 1 will mean what? Support for red and white. This support for red and white we had already calculated, right? What was the support for red and white? So I don't know if you remember or not, but let me like take you there again. If I don't want to calculate it again, right? So we had calculated somewhere, yes. So this is what, around 2 by 5, or this was the support for red and white, right? Or we can calculate it again. You can calculate it again and see what's happening out there, right? So it is 2 by 5 and divided by something, right? Is it making sense or something has gone wrong? Just check it, right? So it would be 2 by 4, right? That's what would be there. Similarly for red, green, and white, you can do these calculations if you want. I mean, we can stop for some time. If you want a pen and paper and do this, you can do these calculations, right? So these are simple ratios, nothing very difficult about it. And you can see it is written support for red, white, green, and support for red and white. So and how we calculate these supports, we know it, right? So we just plugged in those values, we'll get a 50% here, and the confidence for this combination would be 100%, and there would be other confidences also depending on what rule you are forming. So you'll get different confidence values, right? So if you put a cutoff, if you put a cutoff of 70%, then what will happen? This rule is gone. This is will be picked up. This rule would be picked up, and the third rule will be picked up. So only three rules would be picked up, isn't it? So you can put a criteria for selection based on support, confidence, or both, right? This is an output of a software which is known as Excel Miner. Excel, yeah.
Amit, Amit,
Yeah.
Amit, a question here. Can you go back to the slide?
Yeah, this one.
Yes. So maybe I am asking a weird question, but red, white, and green, and red, green, and white. What's the difference? Does sequence matter here?
Sequence will matter when you calculate confidence. See, understand this. When I calculate red, white, and green, then I'll do it support for red, white, and green, right? And
Hmm.
I'll divide it by the support for only the antecedent, which is red and white in this case, right? Let's say I do red, green,
No,
and white, right? Now I do red, green, and white. The numerator will remain the same, but your antecedents are now red and green, isn't it? So the denominator will change. So that is why your confidence
no,
is
no.
going to change.
Can you go back to that table? Table we were seeing.
This one?
Yes, this one.
Hmm.
So what does that mean here? Red, white, and green,
Hmm.
and red, green, and white.
Hmm. 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 The other possibility could be white, green, and red also. Somebody bought red and green and white, so he bought red. This could be the third rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
This could be one more rule. So if you look at this slide, he has given red, green, white. Plus there are four more rules, right, which he hasn't written. So if you try to make rules out of it, you can get four more rules out of it actually, right? Like example, red then green, green then red, white then green, green then white, right? One item can also be there, isn't it? So if you make the,
Maybe I should ask this in a different way. When we are saying red and then green, or if you are saying green and then red,
yeah.
so what's the difference in
See,
this?
understand
So
when I'm
person
saying a rule, see, understand this way. Let's say when I'm saying a rule, it has two sides, right? This is the antecedent
oh,
and this is the consequence.
oh,
Now, this explanation is a mathematical explanation, right? So from a perspective of arithmetic, that's all, right? So we have antecedent and we have a consequent, right? Now, if my formula says that if I want to calculate confidence, then that would be support of all the items, right? So irrespective of they occur on the antecedent side or the consequent side, right? Support for this. That is my numerator. And my denominator has to be only the antecedent only, right? So if you say red, white, green, then your antecedent is red and white, isn't it? And when you say red, green, then white, then your antecedent is red and green. This is the difference between both the rules if you look at it, right? So you in one case your antecedent is red and white, in the other case your antecedent becomes red and green. And if the support for the antecedent is going into the calculations, then the confidence for both these situations is going to change, right? And why are we doing it? Think about it for a moment, right? Because when the market basket comes to you, you do not know whether the person bought red and white, and that's why he was prompted to buy a green also, because he said that anyway I have red and white, let me take a green also, so this will become a good set. Or was it that he actually bought red and green and that's why he bought white? Or there would be people, or what I'm saying is people who will buy red and white will definitely buy green. This is one case where I'm guaranteeing. The other case is I say that if somebody comes and by chance if he picks up a red, then a green, then he is definitely going to buy a white also. Do you understand? This is the difference between the application part of it, right? So we are trying to understand from the data what is the kind of confidence you can put on situation number one. So what is the kind of probability you can attach when you say that if a person, let's say if you're observing somebody, he has picked up a red, then you see he has picked up a white, then you say that okay, I bet he's going to pick a white, he's going to pick a green also. Then the probability is, I'm putting it loosely, probability, that's a confidence, and you say it is 50%. But you see somebody and he picks up a red, he picks up a green, and then you say that okay, there is a guarantee that he's going to pick up a white also, then that guarantee is 100%, right? So you understand this is the difference. So what I'll say is if I'm putting red and green, then probably what I should do is red, green and white I should put very near, because if he picks up red, he'll pick up green, then definitely he'll pick up white, whatever happens, 100% he is going to do that. Whereas if he picks up a red, if he picks up a white, after that, if you are observing him, then the chances are that he might pick up a green. The chances may be, or confidence may be only 50%. He may pick up, he may not pick up, right? So that's what we are, because the sequence is completely missing in this, right? We don't know the sequence in which somebody took those decisions. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to reconstruct sort of the mental sequence, the decision sequences mentally that he would have done. Sort of this is what we are doing, right? So that's why.
That's not my question. So basically, sequence is important here. That could be the actual sequence, or whatever you are saying, virtual sequence we are trying to
Yeah,
make.
it's a kind of sequence that we are constructing, right?
Constructing. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
So,
So
Amit, I have one answer to Ajay actually.
yeah, please go
Ajay,
ahead.
forget about the sequence about in retail scenario. Think about the sequences, say, about network failures, or maybe some sensors capturing, or maybe some machines. So, the sequence play a very important role there. Maybe
Network
for,
failure. Yes.
yeah, you can think about other scenarios,
Mhm.
not related to retail. Then it
Yeah.
makes much more sense.
Yeah, an example in switch failures. If one switch in telecom also, like
Yeah.
if this switch has failed, this has failed, then this will fail because whatever happens, right? Yeah, exactly. That's it.
That's what I was trying to understand.
Hmm.
Sequence is actually important. Then only we can uh, decide, we can frame these type of rules.
Yeah,
If red,
a priori.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we need to understand that in a transaction data you are not explicitly given the sequence, right? So we are trying
Yes,
to
yes. I understood.
reconstruct which sequence would be important. Okay.
Yes. Thanks, Varghvi.
Okay. So this is what. So this is an example where you look at it, and this is the, as I said, this is a software by the name of Excel Miner, which earlier used to be free. So that means it you could actually download it like an add-on and add it to your Excel thing, and you could do all kinds of algorithms in this. It was like R only, but a very good. I mean, it has a very good GUI and all those things. But I think it is paid now. So if you want, you can try it. 30 days free, I think, or 15 days free. After that, it is paid. So it's some item. So this particular problem has been run on that Excel miner, and this is the kind of output that you are getting, right? So confidence is something 100, I don't know what is that, but let's say the rule, your antecedent is green, then this is red and white, then the support is 2. Here it gives in numbers if you look at it, right? So this support for the antecedent is U, the support for consequence is 4, the support for both antecedent and consequence is 2, right? Generally it would be lesser of the two, right? So if you calculate the support for both combined, it would lesser of the number, right? So if it is 2 2, this will automatically become 2 2, right? And what is the lift ratio? If you remember, the lift ratio was support of antecedent and consequence divided by the support of antecedent. So if you look here, the lift ratio, this lift should have been, no, this is support actually. We'll have to calculate the confidence, right? So confidence of antecedent and consequence divided by the support of the antecedent itself, right? So that means first we'll have to calculate the confidences, and from confidences, if you calculate, you will get these lift ratios. So what it means is that the 6 rules are given, the other rules are not given. If you look at the entire data set, I'm sure there would be a lot of rules which would be generated, but only 6 rules are useful. Why? Because you can see the lift ratio, they've been put in a descending order of the lift ratio. The lift ratio has to be more than 1, then only it makes sense, otherwise it does not make any sense. That's why we don't use it, right? So only 6 rules are important right now. This, so the software does the heavy lifting for you, right? I mean, it calculates everything. You are just passing on parameters like what support, confidence, lift is anyway calculated inside. So your role is only just passing some parameters, that's all. Otherwise everything is done by the software. So whatever we have discussed, just more from a perspective of understanding things, right? You will not have to do anything manual anywhere, right? So okay, so just remember that lift is an important thing, right? So at times what happens is there is a role of chance everywhere. The role of chance is always there, right? So some, if you give some random data, right, example, it will give you some interesting association rules, but these association rules may be risky to do, right? So we'll come to those part also. So what are the risks which are related to rules, right? So this is again a data set which is in a binary format, right? So child books, they're different kind of books, youth books, cookbooks, and different kind of books, right? You can see geo books, this and that, right? So this kind of data set is given, and if you run it on Excel miner, you can run it on Excel also. The only thing is you'll have to manually type and prepare this data. So if you put it, you'll see that if these rules are generated, you can see there are 12 rules now which are important because the lift ratio is still this, right? Now if you look at the rule number 2 and 7, rule number art books, child books, geo books, and rule number 7 is child books, looks, art books, right? It's just the order which is reversed. So they have the same books, right? So what has happened is it's the same thing which has almost been like repeated or something. But as I said, they will become different rules if you say that this is the consequence in which the buying happened. So 2 will mean that if somebody bought art book, child book, then what is the lift that he is going to buy a geo book also, geology book also, right? Or geography book also, sorry. And seventh will say that if somebody has bought a child book and a geography book, then what are the chances that he'll buy a art book? So you can definitely see that there is a difference in the lift, right? So if somebody has bought a art book and a child book, then the chances of his buying a geology book are definitely higher, right? So that's the difference, though you see the three components to be common, right? So that thing will always come. So this is the a priori algorithm, can be used in recommender systems also. And where can we use it? I mean, though we are discussing marketing example, but like Bhargavi brought in an example of a network, right? A very relevant example. So it can be applied to networks, it can be applied to anything, right? It can be applied to, and the doctors can apply it and all those things, right? So can be applicable to many places, depends on that. So market basket analysis, of course, is a highly used area. We call it the MBA, right? And you can use it for identifying who customers are, because the names are not given, right? So you can see how customers, what are they doing, right? How, why they are making some purchase, what are your fast moving items, slow moving items. Then you can come out with campaigns. What you can do is you can have a sale and say the fast moving item is clubbed with the slow moving item, right? And you put a sale together or something. So this kind of information is very, very useful if you want to make some slow items as fast items. So you want to really make them fast, then we need to have we can always announce some sales. So those sales, if they are done through this MB exercise, will definitely will, or you can give them customer loyalty cards, and you can assign weights that if you buy these items, you will get more points, versus if you buy some very frequent running items, then your weights are less, because anyway they are selling. So why do you give loyalty points for that, right? So this is what is there, a priori rules. And many places like optional telco service purchases, banking services, medical patient histories, it has been applied to many places. So you can look at the place and actually apply it, right? So uh, then three, generally, if you look at the market basket data, the POS, point of sale data, can be customer, can be based on orders, items, all this is there. But generally, it is the POS data on which it is applied, right? Always remember that, right? And these are some examples, may not be exactly like what you do. Unique items per order, unique items per order, orders per customer, this and that, all these things are calculated and plotted. So visual things are made and then people try to infer from it, right? Many things are done. Let's not get into too much of this, right? Example, association rule, these are some examples. Like Walmart customer who purchase Barbie dolls have 60% likelihood is your confidence of also purchasing one of three types of candy bars. This is for Forbes magazine, reported in September 8, 1997, right? Customers who purchase maintenance agreements are very likely to purchase large appliances. Author experience, right? When a new hardware store opens, one of the most commonly sold items is toilet bowl cleaner, right? So these kind of things can be generated, right? So now coming to the rules, when you look at rules, they can be three kinds that we need to understand. One are actionable rules. These are high quality actionable information. So this algorithm can only guide you to a point. So that means once you decide to put a cutoff of one, then the algorithm guides you to select some rules. But beyond that, can you blindly adopt them? No. Because even the rules that you have selected, they may fall into these three categories. They may be actionable rules, or they may be trivial rules, right? Example, if you do a huge exercise, you ask from somebody, give me your database, this and that, right? The database is like a large database, transaction database, because daily thousands of transactions happen. So you can understand the amount of information that will go inside this database over a period of 2 years or 3 years, right? Massive information, huge. So then somebody takes the pain and gives you the entire data set, and you go and then tell him, okay, I found a rule, bread and butter go together, right? They're very trivial rule. Nobody needed actually to use any kind of association rule on this. A floor manager would have told you just like that. I mean, without you would have gone to him and asked, right, what are the items which go together. He would have told you immediately. The first item would have been this, right? And you do this whole exercise of pulling data and doing a priori or LCAT or whatever it is, and then you come out with some rules. Those are known as trivial things, right? So trivial things are things which are already known, right? So then the last one are the most dangerous thing. Trivial rules is only that people may not get impressed by you. That's the only problem. And they may say, we anyway we know it, so why did you waste your time and resources? That they may not understand. But the third kind of rules are the ones which are really bad, and we call them inexplicable rules, right? That there is no explanation, and they can't suggest any kind of action, right? So if you tell it to business, they just don't understand what it means, right? So it is like this, that with every, let me give you an example. Like, let's say, it may be a weird example, but probably it can bring out the example. Let's say you go to some supermarket, and you tell them that I found a rule, and the rule is, if Colgate toothpaste, then dentures, right? Very dangerous thing, I mean, isn't it? If a person is buying a Colgate dental cream, then why will he buy dentures, right? So it can only be right when you are sure that if you apply this cream, then the tooth are going to, or the teeth are going to fall off, right? Then only you'll buy dentures. So these are inexplicable rules where you don't understand what it means, right? Should not be proposed ideally, isn't it? Nobody will do that. If Colgate, then dentures, right? So these are the three things that we need to understand, right? Okay, this is fine. Now we'll go to R and do some exercise until I find something. So this confidence thing and all this thing is there, lift is there, all those things are there. Okay. So this is the last slide that we like to discuss. So if there is a fast food restaurant, the fast food restaurant maximum it will have 100 items, right? If you go to a Chinese kind of a thing, roadside fast food kind of a thing. I'm not talking even of a, let's say, brick and mortar kind of a restaurant, but somebody has put it up on some kind of a moving kind of a thing, and there, let's say there are 100 items. These 100 items, and if you make combination with three different menus, look at the numbers. 1,61,700 rules can be generated. Massive number, right? Now, this was a fast food. Now, let's go to a supermarket which has 10,000 or more unique item. This is supermarket is of course a small market, right? Hypermarket will have more SKUs. So, if you make two item combination, there would be 50 million rules. And if you make three item combination, there would be 100 billion, right? So, at times what we do is we don't try to work at a SKU level. We treat Colgate toothpaste as the same category, right? So there is a bunching of SKUs that happens, right? So if there is a sunshine or silk shine, whatever, like the shampoo is, so instead of saying that the different bottle sizes, we don't treat, or in the sachets, we may not treat them as different. If we treat them as one, then this will help to reduce some of the SKUs. So you have to bring, so the idea is you have to bring in some practical things, I mean, right? Because 100 billion item sets, if you are making, you are unnecessary, like, let's say, putting a lot of pressure on the computing capability of your machine, right? 100 billion items to form and find rules is going to take a lot of time. I mean, generally, if you put it straight away without doing anything, I have this experience. We had put it on a calculation. We did it for Big Bazaar once. So Big Bazaar at that point of a time had around 50,000 SKUs now. Now they have almost double the number of SKUs. They easily have 1 lakh now. But at that point of a time, they started new only 7 8 months into business. So they had around 50,000 SKUs. So for that 50,000 SKUs, without doing any grouping, we actually pulled the data from their databases and PS databases, and then we put it for this thing. It took almost 3 days to give us the first cut, right? And some of them, the rules were very, very trivial. Like we told them that bread, butter, then milk is a high combination. They said, we anyway know it. I mean, why did you waste 3 days for this? Right? So that is what is there. Okay. So not a very difficult area from the algorithmic perspective. You need an algorithm or you need this because the numbers involved are very, very large. Otherwise, the logic is very, very straightforward and simple, right? But just remember, this kind of a thing is available to us. So if you are working on such a thing, or if such kind of a issue comes up, you can definitely use this, right? So let's try to work on a data set. We'll call it the association rules. And let me show you the data set that we'll use. And this is known as the groceries data set. It's available in R. I've just brought it in this because I wanted to show you. That's the only reason. So let me just open this data set. right? So this is the data set, right? And this is a transaction data set. You can see nothing but just the items, right? So different kind of items you can see. So somewhere you will see 5 items, somewhere you will see 6 items. You can see this, right? So this is the longest line probably, right? And how many items are there if you want to see? So there are around 9,835 items, transactions, sorry. So how many transactions are we working on? 9,835. If you want to calculate the unique item sets here, you can definitely calculate the unique item sets also, right? Will not be a very large number, but definitely like worthwhile thing to work, right? So this is the data set that we are calculating. So this is your transaction number one, this is your transaction number two. So around 9,835 transactions have been we picked up. Of course, this would be a partial thing, or it would be a very small shop, a morning kind of a shop which keeps essentials, right? Not even your grocery store. It would be some essential kind of a shop. Essentials will generally keep only few items. Example, morning they'll come quickly, keep some items, keep 4 or 5 vegetables, or they'll keep 4 or 5 things and just shut off after 2 hours and go away, right? So something that kind of a shop, very limited kind of a stock. So we're working on that. Okay, so let's work on this. So these are the libraries that you'll require. A rules Viz is for visualization. Library data set I've loaded, though I have downloaded the data set. Library grid, matrix, these are essentials. So these are all the libraries that you'll need, and then we'll work on this, right? So let me clear the space for you. Then we have library A rules. Right, and the data which is I need not read it like CSV because I have loaded this package data sets, so it is a part of our data sets only. So data groceries, so I have attached it, right? And now what we want to do is I want to make a plot of item frequency plot. Item frequency plot means that I just want to calculate the frequency with which the items have appeared. So if it has appeared in more number of transactions, it is more frequent, and the item which has appeared in lesser number of things. So this is your data set here, right? Right. So you can see it is stored in a very different way, right? So if you do a STR, let's say you do a STR of groceries, right? Let's say, what do you see? Groceries, right? So this is, you don't see it like a database. If you put it like this, you'll see that this is a very different kind of a thing. It's not the same thing. So it is the formal class transaction. It's a transaction database, right? With 3 slots, it is set, right? So is in a different thing. Generally, if you've seen STR, you have seen it comes in a different way, right? So that's what I was trying to show you. Now, let's say I want to plot item frequency plot, where we want to use the groceries this thing and top 20, the most frequent one, and type equal to absolute. Absolute means the absolute frequency. I don't want to calculate the percentage, but the actual values of it, right? So this command should do some plotting. So I do this, and let's look at the plot, zoom it and see these are your 20 items. So whole milk, if you see, comes 2,500 times. And how many transactions you have? 9,835. So even your most frequent thing is less than 30%, isn't it? It's coming less than 30% because it should be roughly somewhere around 2,500, right? So 2,500 divided by what? Roughly 10,000. So it's only 25% or 27% maximum. And after that, there is a big drop, right? You can see this is approximately 1,800. So if you look at even your top 20 items, in domestic eggs is the last one. If you look at it, I mean, there is a phenomenal drop, right? You are just talking of what, 750 out of 9,800 things. So remember the actual data sets, uh, even the item which you say is very frequent might be like just be appearing now. This is a small shop, right? That's why you are seeing the most frequent item at 25% or something. But if you look at the actual data set of a hypermarket or something, this frequency may be just 5%. Your maximum selling may be 5%, that's all. right? And the others will go into 3% and will go into decimals. Some may go to 0.001% also. So that is the kind of thing that you will see. Okay. Now we want some rules to be generated out of it. We want to use the a priori algorithm here, the grocery data, and this is the parameter list that I'm passing, right? So it gives me an option. So it allows me to pass two parameters. So I'm saying that the support should be what, 0.001, and the confidence should be more than 80%. That's what I want, right? So let's generate rules on this. Let's see what happens. So let's generate rules, right? So it generates some rules, and what does it say? And you can see the times that it shows, it's almost instant, right? Less than 0.00 second, right? So what it says is this thing. It has used a priori, and confidence is zero point 0.8, right? And it says the support is 0.001, minimum length is 1, right? And the maximum length is 10. So minimum length 1 means that antecedent is populated, but the consequent side you have a null. And maximum length 10 means that the antecedent and the consequence both combined will have 10 items, right? You know there are more than 20 items, right? So 10 items is possible. It's not something which is surprising, isn't it? So that's what we get. Now we need to look at it in detail because this is not revealing anything, right? So we need to probably look at it and understand it a bit further, right? So let's say we want only the top 5 rules. So inspect is the command you'll have to use. So the first thing is we are saying that options, we are suppressing the number of digits because at times it gives 7 digits. That may not make any sense. So we are suppressing the digits, and we want the top 5 rules. You can give it more also. So let's look at the top 5 rules. So if I look at the top 5 rules, then this is the left hand side. So the best rule is the first one, and the lift is 11.2. So if you are thinking where this 11.2 has come, this is here because it has gone down, didn't have space, so it has written it at the bottom, right? So you'll have to read it here. 11.2 is the lift. And what is the best rule? Liquor, red and blush wine, and then bottled beer, right? It's out and out liquor. So somebody has bought liquor. What does liquor mean? I don't know. But if the person has also bought wine, then he's going to buy beer also, right? So probably it's about a cocktail, and the cocktail is supported the maximum 11.2, right? So I think Bhargavi, this is a rule which is very, very good for your current company, isn't it? So now the second one, if you look at this, is curd, cereals, then whole milk, right? And the confidence is 3.6. So this whole milk you can see is appearing at 4 places. So some people buy curd, cereals, and whole milk. Some people buy yogurt, cereals, and whole milk, butter jam, and whole milk. And the last one is very, very surprising. It is soups, bottled beer, and then whole milk. Now, that's what I was saying. At times, the rules, I mean, you just don't understand. I mean, what is the connection between soups, beer, and whole milk? I mean, these are three very different things. So why will somebody buy them together? God knows, right? So don't know. I mean, it could be like soups are for breakfast, beer is during what, the lunch, and I think the whole milk could be for dinner or night, right? Something like this. I'm just cooking it up. I also don't know, right? So let's say we can have 10 rules also if you want, right? So if I want to look at the 10 rules, let's look at what do you get in the 10 rules. So the point that I'm trying to drive through is that these rules may not be so easy to interpret, right? That's what I'm saying. It's not that it has given you and you can blindly put it there, right? So example, this is going to remain at the top. We know it, right? That's no problem. But till 5 we had seen it's not going to change. But let's look at the sixth one: napkin, housekeeping product, and then whole milk. I mean, why will so whole milk is like that anybody who goes out to this place, so that means this particular place would be known for milk, isn't it? So basically, it should be a milk parlor. So people go there to buy milk prima facie, basically. But suddenly he also keeps some more items, so they pick up these items also. Like somebody picks up napkins, housekeeping products, whipped sour or sour cream, and then housekeeping product, whole milk. Don't we understand? Cream, housekeeping also, and milk also. So you see, your At times, your rules can be uh, any rule defying kind, isn't it? It can be common sense defying also. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Pastry, sweet spread, wholemeal, turkey, curd, and other vegetable. Okay, so these are the things, right? So at times it becomes very, very difficult to understand which are actually actionable. Now, that is where that lot of discussions have to be done. I mean, it's not that easy after that, right? That's the point, the whole point that I'm trying to put it, right? Now, if you want, you can sort these rules. You can sort them by confidence and say, okay, I want them to be sorted by confidence and I want them in a decreasing order, right? And then you can inspect these rules. I'll do a summary of rules, right? That is something useful. So you can use these codes and see what is happening. Let's say I do a summary of these rules. The summary is very interesting. If you look at it, then what do you get? This is important. It tells you that of all the rules that are generated, then what is the size? So the three item mean counting items on both the side, left hand side and right hand side. See, R uses the term left hand side, right hand side. In the slides we discuss antecedent and consequences. So don't get confused. They are the same thing. Okay. So this is the left hand side and this is the right hand side. So how many rules had three items? 29. Then left hand side, right hand side combined four items, so 229 rules, right? And five items, 140. So what will happen is you'll see this kind of a curve generally. Generally, when you look at this stuff, you'll see this kind of a curve. So somewhere it will peak and then it will start decreasing, right? So this is what you see here. So it is peaking at what? I'm sorry, 4. Your 3 would be somewhere here. Your 5 would be somewhere here, right? So 3, 4, 5, 6. This is how it goes. Okay. This is not too much useful. Then it also shows some more things if you are interested in looking at it. Uh, it shows you. I'm sorry, sneezing has started. So what it shows is that for your support, the minimum support is how much? 0.001102. But remember, this is the minimum that you have given. 0.001 is what you have given. And the maximum is only available is how much? This maximum you haven't given. But the maximum possible support is actually only 0.003. So if you give a cutoff of more than or let's say if you give a cutoff of 0.003, then what will happen? The number of rules suddenly will drop, right? There would be very few rules. So you can go back and let's say we'll do that. And confidence, you see the minimum confidence is 80% and the maximum is 1. And 1 can be the maximum, right? These are percentages. So it cannot be more than 1. And look at the lift, the maximum lift is 11.2. And the rules that are being reported, the lift is 3.1. And definitely always the minimum lift will not be less than 1. We know the reason, right? Because it will put a cutoff. Now coming back here, let's say if I go to this rule and I put a support of let's say 0.03. Let me do that, right? So let's say I say delete, let me put a 3 and let's see what happens then. I'll run this and then what I'll do is I'll go here and say summary rules, right? So now look at it. So how many rules are left? You can see this. There's only one rule left. That's all, right? So set of one rule. There's only one rule that is available, right? So your number should not be very high or very ambitious, right? It cannot be very ambitious this time. And the larger the data sets are, the more cautious you have to be. Your numbers, your support numbers will extremely become starting, will be very, very small, right? But for very large data set, for small data sets, like example, when you were seeing that cover data or something like that, there you could afford to keep 40% also at the cutoff, right? So for smaller data sets, smaller transaction items, smaller inventory, you can have higher support. But for item sets where there is too much of like numbers of inventory, then you should have smaller number, right? This is what we understand. Okay, and you can do this for doing this. Now this one is working or not working, I don't know. At times what happens is that uh, so let me show this. Just read it, right? Sometimes the rules repeat, so there would be redundancy. Hmm. So drop the item from the data set, or you can remove redundant rules generated. Redundant rules are generated. So this is a code for this. God knows this is working or not. Let me try. If it is not working, now you can correct it. I think all of you now start doing, contributing something. Correct it and give it to me, right? That is what you can do. Okay, so I have use some logic. It's not working. It says that ng matrix value is not correct. So there is something known as the NGT matrix. What is the NGT matrix? Normal matrix are matrix which will not have any kind of sparse items. NGT matrix is a matrix which are sparse item. When you're dealing with item sets, you need to deal with sparse item set, right? Isn't it? You'll not have dense items there. So that is what is known as, right, the NGT matrix, right? So this NGT matrix is creating some kind of a problem that I'll have to look at. What could be the problem? God knows, right? Because this is related to creating a matrix kind of a thing. So should be creating some problem. I don't know what it is creating right now, right? Uh, Okay, this we'll see. But let's say we want to set either the left hand side and right hand side, right? If we want to select that we only want to look at those items where it is appearing in a right hand side, right? So that is also there. So what do we do? This is your old a priori data equal to groceries parameter. You remember support confidence. This is what we have passed. Now appearance. So we are using one more syntax which is by the name of appearance. So we are saying let the left hand side be as it is. Let it be the default. But right hand side, I only want those rules where whole milk appears, right? Control equal to list equal to verbose equal to false. That means don't give me details. Verbose, whenever I say verbose, that means don't give me too many details, right? Simple. So right hand side equal to the whole milk. That is what is required. So only pick up those rules where whole milk has appeared, right? So let's see what happens. Is does this actually work? So let's see, this is the thing it has done. Now what we'll do is we'll sort these rules by confidence, let's say. Okay, so we'll sort these rules by confidence and we'll inspect these rules. So you'll see everywhere whole milk is appearing, right? So even if I try to, and how many rules, such rules are generated. So let's say if you want to understand how many rules are generated, and summary, and you can say rules here, right? So if I want to understand that also, so you'll see how many such rules where whole milk is on the right. So you can see it's quite a few number, right? So if you say that left hand, sorry, the RHS is default, and the LHS, if you say you should have whole milk, whatever happens. So this is what you get, right? So your number has increased. So it will pick up, it will forget about the confidence and that parameter, and what will it do? And you can see here very clearly, the lift is zero point 0.4, isn't it? So the appearance thing will override your older thing. So it will pick up any rule even if it doesn't meet your support criteria, and you can see your confidence criteria is not met here, right? It is 0.11. So it will violate both the conditions. If it will not violate for everything, but it will violate the condition if the whole milk is appearing on the left hand side. Those rules also it will pick up. So at times you might require it, right, to do this, right? Now the visualization thing, if you want to look at it, so these rules can be plotted, and this method is graph, and it can be interactive and all those things. So let's plot this, and when you plot it, suddenly you see that this is working here, right? Stop means it's working, right? It will take some time, so let's wait. But the important part is, it will, if you look at the plot area, you will not see anything there, right? So when you are plotting it using a rules viz, it does not use your plot area because it is a HTML kind of a plot, right? And why HTML? Because the GUI is better and all those things, right? So that's why it would be an HTML kind of a thing, and your this area is not, definitely not HTML thing. So that is why a separate this thing will appear. You can see this has appeared here, right? So you can look at this. This is what has appeared, right? And still populating, right? Still working. You see a red symbol there, a red symbol here, right? It's still working, and that's why you're seeing these arrows and new things. So it'll take some time, and this will give you this kind of for HTML kind of a format it gives you, right? So it shows with arrows. So whatever is written as left hand side, this and that, and it will show you through arrows, right? So of course, right, when you have something like this, nobody can read it in the world. For showing it is good, right? You can so you can say circle. There are so many ways in which you can lay this out, right? And let us see if the circular thing is good. But as soon as I put it, you can see it will take a lot of time, right? So it will put it like a circle, take a lot of time, right? So the same thing, left hand side and the arrow going to the right hand side, right? At times, if the number of items is too large, the visual thing may not be a very useful idea. But as I said, you can use it for impressing people also at times, right? There may not actually be a value there, but we can definitely impress around few people, right? So this is what is happening. I mean, it's still working. It will take a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time. I mean, you can see it's on a small data set. It's taking a very long time. And if you want to actually work on a practical kind of a this thing, you require very high computing resources. You can't work with this kind of a thing if you have a large, let's say, database, right? So that you have to keep in mind, right? So it's still populating, you can see. Okay, but this just to give an idea, I mean, you can just run it and see what it gives. Okay, the rules, if they are written nicely in front of you, it makes sense. But if you make some kind of diagrams out of it, at times becomes very difficult. Still working, still doing something, right? You can see still working out here. Okay, so this is like all about association rule mining. It will keep on doing whatever it is doing, right? I was just showing you that this is how you can use it. What real value you can draw through is I haven't understood till now, right? So this is what you call as a rules mining. A rules mining recently I had used for one purpose. Generally, what happens is if you look at the US doctors, right, they record the patient history, and after the patient history, the family history, and then whatever complaints are there, a person might come with 5 complaints. He may say that, okay, I'm sneezing, I have a running nose, and plus I have a headache. So he has given 3 problems, right? So then the doctor will ask, like, what is your major problem? That's known as the chief complaint, right? So the chief complaint may be that he has a headache, that I had a headache, that's why I've come, right? And the other 2 are not your chief complaint. But as a doctor, he needs to record these 3 complaints, isn't it? So when you are writing cold, cough, at times these things, like example, when you say pain, right? But a pain on in the left hand is different from a pain in the right hand, right? Or a pain in the leg is different from a pain in the nose bone, right? So for everything there are standards which are known as the ICD standards, right? ICD standard 10. So when a patient comes, then what happens is the patient is recorded. These ICDs are given, right? So there will be multiple ICDs. I've seen patient with 15 ICDs also. Must be an old person only, right? Somebody who would be around 70 can have as many ICDs possible, but it would be rare to see a young person with so many ICDs, right? So so we are working on these kind of data sets, and we are trying to find out, right, which are the ICDs which are like very common, and what ICD come with what kind of symptoms, what kind of lab test, and all those things. So there we definitely we are using this market basket analysis there to understand that if there is a particular ICD, then what are the kind of lab tests that come with that, right? So if this ICD, then these lab tests, right? So we are trying to formulate rules. These rules would then be fed into a EHR. So any doctor, if he types in ICD, immediately what will happen? The lab test will pop up before him. So wherever like somebody saw these ICDs, then these are the lab tests that were there. So a recommender, you can say this is a recommendation system or whatever. We are already working in a health case, right? And that's a huge data. That's around 4 GB of data that we are working. and we are working on a Hadoop platform to solve this. So I've told you a practical use also where we are actually trying to use it. Of course, it is midway, so there are a lot of iterations would be involved. It's not so easy. I mean, that just fire one algorithm and the problem is solved, right? So we're trying to solve this kind of a stuff. Okay. So I've given you an example also. It's still working, right? So this is all I think about association rules or market basket analysis, and this is the last easy algorithm that we could come across, right? So PCA was not that difficult, and association rule mining is very easy. So we have, for 2 sessions we have covered easy algorithms. Now we'll switch on to something which is more modern, or we'll enter into the world of AI now, artificial intelligence, right? Machine learning, whatever the way we have done it, it's already now people are saying that this is going to become old, right? So typically, in fintech, I always told you last 1 week that 3 fintech companies which have contacted me, right? There is a fintech company in Delhi which wants a data science head, and they are ready to pay 50 lakhs as the salary per annum. And if anybody of you wants or is willing to show the courage and go there, I can definitely put your CV, right? So if you want to go there, just send me your CV, and I can just put your CV across. That's not a problem. Okay. So, and that's a lead position. I mean, that means there would be a team under you. You'll have to guide them. You'll have to understand how to solve the problem, which algorithm to choose, and all those things, right? If you are lucky, if you get some really intelligent kind of a subordinate, life would be easy. But I mean, you'll have to do lot many things. So if you are interested, just let me know, right? So this is one information for you. Fintechs are require people like mad, I mean, I tell you, right? And they are paying handsomely, there is no doubt about it. Okay, so think about it and let me know. Okay, so this is all for today, and we'll, as I said, like we'll get into the more difficult part of it. We'll get into this area of artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence, which is more, let's say, current, mm, uh, which I think people are saying that will replace everything. I don't see that happening, but at least people are very, very, let's say, upbeat about it. And so let's see. So we'll go through brick by brick. We'll go through it slowly. We'll first understand neural networks. That's what we'll start in the next session. So we'll start with neural networks. We'll understand transformations, kernels, these and these things, right? So a few topics, and then we'll go to deep learning, and then we'll use TensorFlow then, right? How can you use TensorFlow to solve those problems, right? Then we'll do some image identification problems, image classification problems, right? So you can send in your photos, your group photo if you want for trial. So you can send me photos where you are present in a group, right? And your individual photos, and you can see TensorFlow will identify you, right? It will make a box around your face that this is this person, and you can wear some hat also in that group photo if you want, right? Then also it will identify that this is the person that you are looking for. Okay, so that is image classification, exciting area. So this is what we'll do, right? So this is all for today, and we'll, in the next session, as I said, we'll start with neural networks, right? If you have any questions, do let me know. Otherwise, we'll close the session.
No, nothing from my side.
Okay. Okay, fine. So let me just close the session. So we'll meet
Thank you.
next
Thank
week.
you very
Thank
much.
you all.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.